doing online to online versus on-prem to online, and kind of define the differences and go through that. So again, I'm going to be talking high level. There's kind of just set the stage. There's a total of three, 2 slides and 1 Word doc that we're going to review to kind of show you all the moving parts. But we'll go ahead and get going. So we'll talk about the easy one, which is online to online. And usually when these scenarios happen is when certain companies get acquired, and during that acquisition process, they just want to move away from their current tenant and go into a new tenant. So they kind of reach out and they want to do a lift and shift essentially of their environments, plural. So we do as many environments as they want. So the typical that we're seeing lately is sandbox, test, and prod. We have a customer that we're working right now with that has a fourth one, which is pre-prod. But again, the same moving parts and the same exercise is conducted for each one. So how I'm going to describe this and how we're going to do that, it's the same process, rinse and repeat for every environment. Prod has no special additional steps outside of what Sandbox is. The way Microsoft kind of handles it, it looks at it no different from one to another. So that's another comment that I want to call out too, is Microsoft is a big support and a huge partner as part of this process. So we don't have to work with data migration. Usually they're all high level. Again, all it is they forklift it, getting it from one environment. Almost think of it of unplugging it and plugging it into their new environment. There is some steps that we need to do and conduct prior to that, but again, the heavy lifting Microsoft does. So I'll walk through what the online to online kind of entails, and again, we'll go into a layer deeper in a bit. So here, doing the online is obviously we create the new environments in the new destination location, right? So we need a new tenant. Once we do that, we go ahead and we spin up however many environments we're going to be moving. Number 2 is essentially the user mapping document. So what we do there is go into their source tenant and really understand what we're planning to move. So there's kind of 2 forks in the road. There is the biggest piece is understanding what we're going to do with the folks that are no longer with the organization that phased out. So there's essentially 2 options. Either we create those users in the new destination location and issue them license, or we create service accounts. The wrinkle there is when we do data migration, doing this is we can all the users that we didn't find, we can kind of default them to a specific user account. Microsoft doesn't allow us to do it that way. It has to be a one-to-one. So if there's 5 people no longer with the organization and those 5 folks own records, either we create them at the destination or we create 5 unique service accounts and we issue them licenses. And then part of the once that's done, we can definitely go ahead and go through the offboarding process, but part of the migration is we need them to be active and have a valid license issued to them. And then the third part is essentially Power Automate. Essentially take a catalog of all the external processes, right? It can be Power Automate, any marketing, if they have any third-party tools of any phone integrations, anything that is essentially a bolt-on to CRM, we need to take a catalog of it. And we need to identify it because part of the migration of the lift and shift, Microsoft will not be moving it. It is ours and that client's responsibility to make the necessary adjustments once we move over to the new destination location and reestablish those connections. So that is another critical part of this exercise. So we just take an inventory of what we need to do and reestablish connections once we land into the new environment, into the new tenant, and so we can reestablish those connections. What we do also too, and I think it's more of a best practice for us, and it really saves our butt. And well, mine in essence, I have a good story that I can share with you if we have enough time. Take a copy of those environments, of the source ones. So if you have 3 environments, right? If we're moving sandbox, test, and production, prior to moving it over, take a copy of it because Microsoft is not perfect. something may happen or something we may have forgotten, we have an environment that we can kind of default to and back up to on that one. So always is a good best practice to always take a copy of those environments before the migration takes place. And essentially, once 2, 3, and 4 take place, it's a matter of just submitting a request with Microsoft. We fill out, they send us some information. Essentially, it's a tenant information form that we put essentially the source URL and the destination URL and what the names of the environments are, in addition to the user mapping file. So they run some scripts on the user mapping file before they do the migration to make sure that the people that are on the source that are on that file exist in the destination. They run some scripts to validate it, and if that's good, then we're off to the races. At that point, what Microsoft does is takes the environment, that specific environment, offline up to 24 hours and moves it. And what we do there is conduct some post-migration steps, and that really entails is we go and confirm that all the workflows that need to be turned are on, and the external processes those connections are reestablished, and we do some regression testing. So we go into the system and kick the tires essentially, and once we feel the system is right based on what we expected, how expected, and the behavior was on the source side, we go do the same exercise and make sure we do an end-to-end testing, and if that shakes out, we hand it over to the client for them to do user testing to ensure that that's what they expect. And then once we get the green light, is essentially rinse and repeat for all the other 2 environments. There's nothing different that takes place in that exercise doing the other 2 environments. I'm gonna pause there. And Rich, did I miss anything at a high level before we go into the into the on-prem to online?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, cool. Any questions from online to online?
Yeah, a couple.
Okay.
Have you gotten pushback on getting users to just reassign the records from folks who are no longer with the company before you go through all this?
Yes, that's happening now with our current client Acumera, because you not only have to create those users in the new environment, you got to buy licenses, but in this case, they have a huge turnover, and the licensing cost was going to be $9,000 extra for those 30 days to add all those. So the business made the decision and say, hey, I'm just going to swap them out to a service account. So now the service account is the owner of those licenses, but that has to happen before the migration, and that also has to happen before we submit the user mapping file to Microsoft.
Right.
Yep. Go ahead.
Second question. Will they do, like, if you got 3 environments, will they do them all 3 at the same time, or you have to do it as 3 separate exercises?
3 separate exercises. But you can do them within hours of each other.
So within the same 24-hour period?
No. You do. You'd finalize that and say they take 20. They give themselves a window of 24 hours. We've seen, like, for example, when we did it with Solve, it only took them 2 hours. But rule of thumb that Microsoft tells clients and sets the expectations, we're going to need 24 hours. They may not need the 24 hours, but they just kind of, hey, 24 hours. If they finish early, like Solve did, I think that ran about 2 hours, and we were given the green light to go in there. So, but they just rule of thumb that Microsoft just does is just, hey, it's going to take 24 hours. But to your core question is, as soon as they do the first one, let it be if they took 24 hours or 2 hours, they can do it immediately after.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Awesome. So moving on to on-prem to online. 1 through 7 is the exact same steps that you will be conducting on the on-prem to online. There's a few different things that Microsoft does take a look when clients are considering to go from on-prem to online. In order to be eligible, they first must get approved by Microsoft to see if they're eligible, and it's based on number of seats. That I think over the past maybe 6 to 8 months, that specific statement is going away. We spoke with a few people at Microsoft that were seeing clients wanting to go from on-prem to online, and Microsoft also are starting to notice that because it's harder to support the on-prem stuff. So that specific statement, the reason why is it's still there. If you were to go and try to put a ticket with Microsoft to try to do this, you still get that messaging. You must first be eligible. You got to get approved, and it's based on number of seats. That's going away. So that's the only reason that I put that there. Is one, if you were to go to try to submit a ticket or inquire about it, that's the first message that'll be plastered all over it. Just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Even though that's there, they are ignoring that, and they're just approving everybody to do it. The only prerequisites to that, based on air quote the approval, they must be at least at a minimum on version 9. If they're not on version 9, we're going to need to upgrade them first before we can consider any of this. So if they're in version 9, we can definitely go ahead and submit that request, and it does not count for the number of seats. It can be a 2-seat implementation. It doesn't matter. They'll approve them all now. The only added things that we want to do on the on-prem to online that we've done is we build out an ERD to ensure that you're going to bring over all the tables. And the reason why you build out an ERD here versus and don't do it on the online to online is there's a lot of deprecated entities that are on the on-prem environment that you don't need. And this gives them an opportunity to kind of take that exercise and actually account for all the entities they're really using and leave all that jazz behind, because carrying that forward, I think it's kind of a nightmare to clean that up once you get to the online environment. So that added item of building out the ERD is a good exercise, and it helps Microsoft to actually do that migration, because of or also call out, hey, there's some deprecated entities. We got to go through them and do the exercise. So essentially what you're doing with the ERD is being proactive versus Microsoft telling you. So you probably want to do that. Other things that you have to consider doing this is the forms. As you know, on-prem, it's a scroll down, and the online is tab, 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 tab. When they move the environment from on-prem to online, there is no rhyme or reason how they organize those tabs. They'll just kind of put it wherever they want. So that's another item that you have to consider within the EOW, is the forms and the UI design and configuration of that. Another line item too is the design of the model-driven apps. That concept or that does not exist on-prem. So that's also an item that you have to consider and factor in within the body of work that you submit to the client. Also too, the last item, which is we got to just kind of do all the JavaScript. We got to kind of get a catalog of that and understand what's deprecated. We've done it both ways. If a client's light on code, in the sense it's not a heavy code-based environment, we do the analysis and the evaluation on the on-prem side. If it's big, like protective life, we brought it over and then we worked through it and just deprecated as stuff came through. So again, so there's no right or wrong. It's just really based on what you really want to do. But that is something that you have to consider in that body of work. Expect that you will be updating some JavaScript. So I'm gonna pause there and ask if there is any questions from on-prem to online.
Do they let you do a dry run to see how it's going to look?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, it's not required, but that's what I did. I take a copy, essentially. I create a new environment, take a backup of that sandbox, and just do it, just to make sure that I got all my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions before we move on to the next slide? Sweet. All right. So the next slide here is just kind of giving you an idea of how I built out the estimate of work. On the left side, you have the areas, and then the second column is the items, third is the hours, and then the cost, and then the last comment, the last row is comments and notes. So I broke it out pretty straightforward. You got a tenant evaluation and setup. So you do your solution health check to make sure that everything's on the up and up. And then on the destination side, kind of like what we talked about, you're going to go have to set up the new environment. And then the user mapping, that is as simple as I make it sound to be. That is quite the extensive exercise to do, because depending on the client, they may take a different approach every time. So it is a good exercise to do there. Then the cloud migration, as you can see, the rehearsal mock runs, you see that be a bigger bucket of hours. And the reason why is it goes back to Jonathan's kind of comment. Does it let you do a dry run? I anticipate that all day long, and it's worth doing it. And once you do a voiceover why those hours are that way versus production, the client gets the warm and fuzzy to say, hey, these guys are taking the proper precautions and doing a dry run before we start fiddling with any of the real environments. So that's what we do there. And then the Power Apps and integration, essentially, again, the catalog of Power Apps. So here there's a fork in the road here as well, is depending on the client, either we take a catalog and provide them the catalog so we can establish those connections, that if they have the staff to do it on their side to reestablish. But if not, we had other clients that we do the work. So that 16 hours can go up to 80 hours as an example, right? But in this case, this was just a few design sessions to make sure that we took the right inventory of all the processes that surround Dynamics that won't be part of the migration. And then we hand over that comprehensive list of all the items that we need to do once we do the dry run or any rehearsal runs in this matter. And then the last two sections is the typical boilerplate stuff. You got your architecture and design and your release management. But that's kind of in a nutshell what we do doing the tenant to tenant migration. And again, very similar to the on-prem. Again, this is the online to online. The on-prem would have had the additional items like the ERD, the JavaScript kind of review, and so on and so forth. So since this one's a online to online, just wanted to give you guys a glance of what that looks like. And I think we're at time or past time, but I think we're good. I know we had another document, so I'm going to save that document. And that was just kind of a working document of what steps we take and kind of get into a little bit more detail.